We're about ready to rock and roll. So welcome everybody, and thank you so much for prioritizing some of your valuable time and focus and energy today, and sharing some of that time with me to join this particular session, this very short kind of bite-sized session, to help us understand a little bit more about some of the outcomes and understandings and objectives of the Habits for Health program, but also today to focus around achieving goals and understanding a little bit more about that. Feel free to share your reflections as always in the chat function. Utilize that chat function to share your thoughts, your ideas, your answers. It's a nice, safe space. It's a non-judgmental space, so feel free to utilize that chat function if you want to. Hopefully you've all got a nice warm drink or a bottle of water or a glass of water within arm's reach. If you have, give me a little raise the hand. Let me know that you're there, and let me know that everything's ready to rock and roll. What we're going to do, we're going to bounce through the session today, and we're going to share with you some information, share with you some resources via the slide deck here. And again, as always, I invite you to give yourself permission today to be as present as you possibly can. Put away those distractions and give this your full focus just for this next 20 to 30 minutes. It's not a long time, but it's a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to pause and have a little reflection around perhaps some of the choices we're making or some of the new ideas that we might want to be implementing. This time of year, of course, it's a time of change. It's a time of happiness and joy and connection, but it's also a time of stress and challenge and financial kind of worries and difficulties sometimes, where we're getting lots of things ready for this wonderful occasion this time of year. So utilize this opportunity to again pause and reflect. And often at this time of year, of course, we are setting ourselves some goals, right? And certainly into the new year, where we start to go, okay, well, this is a wonderful opportunity, isn't it? New year, new me, and all that jazz. So it's a useful thing that we're doing today is to really discuss and understand a little bit more about goals and what that really means, and how we can, really create that traction and that consistent kind of progress that we really desire in order to move a little bit closer towards our goals. So let's jump through it and see how we get on. And again, as I said, feel free to share your reflections. I've launched a little poll, and it's just a wonderful, simple poll. It asks you to reflect around your current well-being at the moment. If 10 is, you feel like it's exactly where you want it to be right now and you're thriving, and 1 is it's furthest away from where you want it to be right now and you feel like you're struggling at the moment, where would you sit on that scale? And it's always a nice, very subjective kind of review and check-in on our own well-being and wellness. Okay, let's jump into it and see how we get on. So our key objectives today, of course, is to face up to that challenge. I acknowledge that life is difficult. Do we all agree? Give me a high five. Life is difficult, right? Life is challenging. Do we all agree? Right, exactly. Who wants but do raise your hand if you want a little bit more difficulty in your life. Life is difficult, not always, but a lot of the time life is challenging. So we're going to face up to that challenge. We're going to share with you some insight, and hopefully just increase the choices that you have available to you. We're going to reflect today on why you want to change your daily habits. The why, and connecting with our why, is one of the most important things that we need to do in order to really drive motivation and readiness to take action. But also it gives us that directed action, doesn't it? So once we know why we want to do what we want to do, it sort of blows wind into our sails, and that's what we're after as well. We're going to understand the power of process today. I'm going to introduce you to what that means today, and of course we're going to commit to progress as we do all the ways in our bite-sized sessions. So the first thing I want to pause and reflect around is our intention, right? So let's take a moment just to pause. What is it really that causes people to slide into those unwanted habits? What enables others, to really make the most of those compounded effects of those wonderful habits, those winning habits that they're implementing? Now, I suspect, conventional wisdom says that the best way to achieve what we want, whether that's feeling fit, feeling stronger, spending a little bit more time with our loved ones, relaxing a little bit more, worrying a little bit less, whatever it is, the best way to achieve that is to set ourselves specific actionable goals. And for many years, that's how I kind of approached my habits as well. Each new habit I set myself was a goal to be reached, and probably, like you, I'd set myself all sorts of things to do, all sorts of new habits, from learning and development habits that I wanted to achieve, perhaps even the weights that I wanted to lift down the gym, how I wanted to perform down the gym physically, the amount of money I wanted to earn, all of that sort of jazz. And like you, I succeeded in a few of those things, and I also failed in many more. Eventually, though, I began to realize that my results had very little to do with the goals I set, and nearly everything to do with the systems that I followed, that I put in place. So what's the difference between systems and goals? Goals are about the results, aren't they? They're about the results that we want to go and achieve. It's about your intention. So your goals are your intention. The systems are all about the process. It's all about the process that leads to those results. It's about your action. It's about what you will do and how you will do it. And that's the process. Do we all know that person? And it might be you, but do we all know that person that thinks a great game? Give me a high five. They've got loads of great ideas, but never any action. There's never any action behind it sometimes. So we all know so much that we don't do. And having wonderful intention without action is like multiplying by zero. Nothing really gets done. There's no progress. So we want to look at implementing that intention. Once we identify that intention, it then points us in the right direction. That provides us with a little bit more readiness, a little bit more motivation to take those steps towards that outcome, that goal. And the most important thing here is to understand those systems, the processes that we need in order to achieve the things that we want. So some of the systems that you might be familiar with, that we speak a lot about in the Habits for Health program and in these bite-sized kind of sessions, are things like habit stacking. If stacking and connecting habits, layering them on top of one another. So if I wanted to introduce more movement into my day, if I'm going to stack some habits, I always have lunch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stack that movement habit straight after my lunch. So we start to connect those. It might be morning routines. That's another system that we might start to want to implement. If I want to get better quality sleep, perhaps I need to really focus on the idea that my sleep quality begins as soon as I wake up in the morning. So I might start to change and implement my routine as a part of that process. Perhaps it's if I want to manage my resilience and become more resilient, perhaps then one of the processes in order to achieve that goal might be to focus on diarising, planning, scheduling, and completing those flow exercises and activities that relax you and give you a sense of progress and fun and laughter and enjoyment and happiness. And of course, one of the other key things is those 1% progress experiments. These are the parts of the process, aren't they? So think about the processes when we start to think about those goals and designing those different systems. If I asked you this question, what would you say? If you ignored your goals and focused only on your systems, will you still succeed? So I mean, if you're a football manager, right, forget about setting goals almost. Focus on those systems instead. Focus on those week-to-week systems. If I employ and implement systems that achieve the win, my team winning every week at the end of the season, of course, I'm going to achieve that goal. So it's all about those systems, isn't it? So what do we mean, really? We mean, a handful of problems arise when you spend too much time thinking about those goals and not enough time focusing on those systems. Okay, so why is that important? Remember, we said about connecting with our why, connecting with the real underlying reasons, the things that's going to drive you into action. And this becomes incredibly important because when we start to pause and reflect around certain things that we want to achieve, or certain habits like read more or eat better, they're of course worthy goals, they're worthy causes, but they're far too vague. So goals, we want to be very, very specific, don't we? We want to we want our goals to provide kind of instruction on how and when we are to act on them. So the specificity becomes very, very important. And to help us understand our goals, we can align them and clarify them and align with them with our values. So understanding what is really important to you, what does optimal well-being really mean to you? What does success really look like to you when it comes to your own health and your well-being? Align the things that are important to you with your goals and your aspirations. So think about, the goal needs to be very specific. We can't be too vague. Perhaps you've got the typical New Year's goal is that I want to be happier, healthier, in 2026. But what do they really mean when we ask those questions? What does happier really mean? What does healthier really mean to us? So we want to create those concrete intentions, then create clear line and clear pathway to understand exactly what it is, so that every time we think about it, it points us in that direction. So it's very directional. So for some intentions, you may not be sure what you can do to make them happen. That's okay. Just having that intention is the first step and the most important step. Now, there's some examples of some intentions there. Intentions are those goals, those intentions that we set ourselves. They're positive, aren't they? They're aspirational kind of statements. They're about what we want to experience or what we want to achieve. They reflect our desired mindset, and they reflect a specific course of action that we're going to take as well. And this kind of begs the question, doesn't it? Why do we care about that goal? What will implementing the processes and the systems to achieve this goal, what will that give you? Why do you care about your intention? And of course, then another lovely follow-up question is, what specific habit or behavior would you like to introduce? What is it that you want to introduce? What's going to be a nice little system, a nice little process that you can implement, that that if you could sustain that, it would give you marvelous results? And when we start to think about that, there's a wonderful book. I absolutely encourage you to have a little look into this book. There's lots out there, of course, but this is one that we found is extremely useful. In Gary Keller's, The One Thing, there's a wonderful question that we utilize quite a lot here at the Habits for Health program. And that's, what is the one thing that you can do today such that by doing it, everything else will become easier or unnecessary? Now, you can utilize that question to focus on your professional life. So what's the one thing I can do today that's going to knock over that first domino so that I can kind of move forward? And if I get that done, everything's going to be easier for me. What's the one thing you can do professionally? And of course, what's the one thing you can do personally and outside of work? So building and implementing that intention takes time, and it takes a little bit more time than me having a little chat with you right now. So I absolutely encourage you to schedule in some time. I typically take my time between Christmas and New Year to have a little write down, have a little think, just invest some time, just to pause and reflect. Okay, well, what does the next year look like? What does the next 3 months look like for me? What do I really want to achieve? How can I kind of set myself up for success? Because kind of the environment, kind of, as we said, it makes it difficult for us, right? Life is challenging. So how do we go about implementing our intention? Now, as you can see here, researchers began working with 248 people to build better exercise habits. This is just a bit of research that I looked into over the course of 2 weeks. Now, the first group was a control group one, and they were simply asked to track how often they exercise. The second group two, was the motivation group. They were asked to track their workouts, but to also read some materials on the benefits of exercise. And researchers also explained to this group how exercise could reduce their risk of coronary heart disease and improve their health. And that was group two. And group three received the same presentation as group two, but it ensured essentially it ensured the same level of motivation. However, they were also asked to formulate a plan for when and where they would exercise over the following week. Now, specifically, each member of the third group completed the implementation intention sentence. And this is a wonderful sentence. And this is what I'm going to encourage you to reflect around. So we'll notice here that this sentence becomes very important. Now, the first and second groups, as you can see, 35%, 38% of people exercise at least once a week, but 91% of the third group exercise at least once a week, more than double the normal rate, as you can see here. And that's because the only difference, it turned out, was that sentence at the bottom. During the next week, I will partake in at least 20 minutes of vigorous exercise on this day at this time, and crucially and importantly, at this location. Now, typically when we write down things to achieve and we add it to our diary, it's just the time and the day, right? So, okay, well, I'm gonna book in my gym session on this day at this time. But what we really need to do is to start focusing on adding that one little extra piece of information, which is the location. And as you can see, it can really, really support us in gaining a little bit more traction in our habit. Now, many people think that a lack of motivation, when they lack motivation, it's really not motivation. Perhaps it's a lack of clarity around what it is they really want to go and do. And it's not always obvious when and where to take action, right? I think we can all agree. Wellbeing is a bit of a moving target. Our environment shifts constantly. So it's not always obvious when and where to take action. And some of us, we can wait, can't we, our entire lives for the time to be right to make those improvements. And we procrastinate, don't we? We often kind of procrastinate about stuff because we feel the time's not right, and it all has to be perfect in order for me to kind of make it work. Does that resonate with you? Give me a high five if that kind of resonates with you. Sometimes we procrastinate, we just wait for the perfect time and place. So what I'm encouraging you to do is to look at your goals now and perhaps look at this process, look at this system of writing down each week, this sentence during this next week, I will partake in, and then you can put in your particular system or your particular habit that you want to implement on this day at this time, and crucially in this place, in this location. Now, a little bit about motivation. Motivation is very overrated. It's motivation, it comes and goes like waves on a beach. Do we all agree? Are you 100% motivated 100% of the time? I don't think so. If you do know someone that is, please introduce me to them. I would love to meet that person. But motivation is unreliable by its nature, right? It comes and goes. So we need to set ourselves up for success every single time. Now, this is a wonderful, simple model that helps us understand a little bit more about motivation. As you can see here, it's a wonderful model by BJ Fogg, and it's a wonderful book as well, Tiny Habits. If you haven't had a little look at this book, please kind of invest and learn a little bit more about it, because it's a really, really simple read. It's really, really effective as well. So as you can see here, if you've got low motivation, but your ability, your capability to do something is good, and it's really easy for you to do, we don't need much of a prompt there in order to get over that action line for us to implement that habit. If our motivation is very high, but it's very difficult for us to do, again, it's important that we notice that we still need a prompt, we still need a trigger in order to get over that action line. So one of the most important things to consider when we are implementing change, when we are implementing habits, is to make any kind of new habit, make it very obvious for us, make those prompts stand out for us. And this becomes incredibly important, doesn't it? Because, we probably know that person that seems to be, always motivated and has wonderful amounts of willpower and all that sort of jazz. But actually, that's not the case. It's probably much more likely that they're self-habituating. They're creating the environment for themselves that gives them no alternative but to take action, but to be successful. So what they likely do is, if any new habits, they make it obvious so that they lean into the habit, and it doesn't take much effort to do that. And conversely, of course, if you want to stop a habit, if you want to prevent yourself from continuing with this certain behavior, remove the prompts so that you're not teased into it. We go through our day, our world is littered with triggers that will kind of indulge us and ensure that we relapse. So what we want to do is to take those prompts and perhaps make them a little bit more invisible if we want to make or break habits. It's about being obvious if we want to make a new habit. It's about being invisible if we want to break a new habit. Does that make sense to everybody? I think the really key thing here is to reflect around, if we are going to introduce habits into our day, new habits, that we want to set ourselves up for success. It's our environment that plays a big, big part in our success as well. And motivation, it's unreliable, isn't it? It's that one thing that's guaranteed to let us down. If things kind of start if we start to find it difficult. So you don't have to be a victim of your environment. You can also be the architect of it. So it's about designing the environment that's going to put you in the best position to achieve the changes and the traction that you really, really desire. Now, we speak about this quite often again, this Pareto principle. It states that, for many different outcomes, roughly 80% of the consequences come from, the 20% of the causes. So in other words, a small percentage of the causes have a very outsized effect. So for example, 80% of your success comes from 20% of your ideas, 80% of your stress, perhaps is caused by 20% of your stressors, 80% of your sleep quality occurs in 20% of the different stages of your sleep, these sorts of things when it comes to the Pareto principle. Now, this concept is very important to understand because it can help us identify which habits to prioritize and which habits that we can implement that are going to give us the biggest impact here. So it's worth noticing as well that there is a bit of a common misconception when it comes to this particular principle, that 20% of effort can, you can achieve 80% of the results with only 20% effort. That's not necessarily the case, when it comes to the Pareto principle, but the majority of what you want will come from the minority of what you do. So when it comes to achieving the goals that you set yourself, implementing your intention, it's about focusing on those one or two things that you feel are going to give you the very biggest bang for your buck. And what are they going to be? So what's the one thing? Again, we go back to that wonderful kind of question. What's the one thing that we can do today that we know it will give us a big bang for a buck and take us, direct us and take us one step closer to our goals, whatever they might be for us. So take a moment over the next, month or so, especially this time of year, where we start to feel like we have got a bit of wind in our sails, perhaps at the turn of the year, and utilize that, ride that wave of motivation and inspiration, ride that wave to kind of get yourself set. It's always a good thing to do right now to get a bit more clarity, a bit more insight into some of those things that you want. And it's almost like you can use it as a bit of a springboard now to get you ready, to really build your readiness for the changes that you're going to implement perhaps after the Christmas holidays. Because, the environment is going to be working against us. I think we can all agree over the Christmas period. If we're setting ourselves goals like reducing alcohol or, reducing, snacking and things like that, it's going to be a lot more difficult because the environment is going to be littered with those triggers. So take time to learn a little bit more about mindset, how to achieve anything. There's these wonderful kind of modules in the Habits for Health program. Understand a little bit more about habits and habit cycles. Understand how you can manage your time effectively. And remember that goals are good for setting direction, but systems are the best for making progress. Remember, you do not rise to the level of your goals, but you fall to the level of your systems. So think about the different processes that you're going to do. Think about the non-negotiables that you're going to introduce into your day that might seem insignificant, but actually they will give you a huge bang for your buck if you consistently kind of apply them over time. let me just do this, this, and this, and this. If you are joining me live here, thank you for attending. It's been very short and sweet. Hopefully it's provoked a lot of thought, but importantly, remember, it's provoked a bit of action. And remember, having that intention without action is like multiplying by zero. So we want to attempt something, whatever that looks like for you. Get stuck into it. You can reach out to us here at Wellbeing People, and we're more than happy to connect with you and to listen to some of your ideas and successes and challenges. So please feel free to reach out to us. Remember, we are here as a support mechanism for you and a safety blanket and a springboard for you to go and progress. So please reach out to us. Use this as a resource as best as you can, and see how you get on. We wish you a very happy and restful and fun Christmas, and look forward to connecting again in the new year. Thanks, everybody.